Thank you very much. Welcome. Thank you very much for coming to the Standards Committee meeting at Basingstoke and Dean Borough Council. Fire evacuation, we're not expecting any fire alarm tests this evening, so if you do hear the bell ringing, then we'll leave through reception and gather at the War Memorial Park. This meeting is being webcast live on the internet and will be available to view on YouTube after the meeting. Just to remind everyone that in order to be heard clearly, please speak directly into the microphone, and the stem can be moved so it's about a hand spans away from your mouth, and just a warning to switch off your mobile phones if possible. Thank you very much indeed. I'd just like to welcome everyone, especially Councillor Mummalaneni, back to the committee. Thank you very much for rejoining us, Aaron. Thank you. We have some apologies. Ian Elkins, Francesca Maritin Hawkins, Martin Slatford, and the Independent Standards Advisor, Amanda Povey. I'm not aware of any other. We're all here other than that, aren't we, pretty much? Fabulous. Any declarations of interest? No? Any urgent matters I'm not aware of? Nope. We'll move on to the minutes of the meeting held on the 11th of November 2024. Can I move that they're an accurate record and that everyone's happy with them? Yes. Yep, fantastic. In which case I will sign them. And if we can then move on to the consultation on strengthening the standards framework. My thanks to those who came to the workshop a few weeks ago, and I think Fiona has a report on it. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. So the government consultation has now closed, so this is really just an information report which formally records the workshop that some members of the committee able to attend on the proposals in the consultation. It also reports on the County Council response and the response submitted by the Local Government Association. So I understand there was reports that the Minister said in Parliament last week that there'd been about 2,000 submissions to the consultation. And he also said that the MHCLG were working at pace to analyse the submissions. So we're not aware of any timescales yet, and I'll of course inform the committee when I hear more. Thank you.
Thanks very much, Fiona. So it's an interesting report. It seems you ask 3 councils for their opinion and get 5 opinions back. Do any have any comments or questions about the process? Tony.
Yeah, I'm afraid I didn't go to your thing, so I expect I'll be somewhat different. With what we in Basingstoke and Dean, when we look at councillors being summoned or whatever, it's very low and it's usually very minor. So why are we looking as a council for anything different? Would be my question. Is there an underlying thing, not from Basingstoke, but from the government, that they wish to change things?
Yes, we're very fortunate here that the behaviours and conducts haven't been poor at all since I've been here. But some councils do have quite difficult councillor behaviour, which they're trying to address through these proposals and changes in the legislation. So since 2010, there haven't really been any sanctions that councils can give to their standards committees can give if there has been a breach of the code of conduct. So they're trying to strengthen the whole regime, really make it consistent across the country and across parishes and town councils as well. So we're lucky, we are very fortunate that the behaviours and conduct here and all the parishes are good as well, but it's not to say that it's not happening elsewhere in the country where the conduct is much poorer in some places.
Really, I can understand when you get bad counsel, and we've been that way before your time. But at the end of the day, most people behave themselves. It's the way the council's run, not just by councillors but by officers. And I think sometimes when you have all these different things coming out, some people like to complain for the sake of it and catch councillors out. In the end, I think democracy should be what it is. You'll be, as long as it's within reason, you say what you like, because that's what you're elected for. And I think if we put too much in, we'll be sitting there and saying, well, better not say that, better not say this, and that's my concern.
Thank you, Tony. Linda, do you want to say something?
I know many years ago, obviously, because I've been on here for donkey's years, that we used to have the same system that is now being proposed. And one thing I think that is missing at the moment is not so much with Basingstoke and Dean, but a general view of politics, councillors and everything else over the country at the moment, that they want to have faith in whether they can complain or not, and it will be dealt with. And I think this is part of the way to achieve that.
Thank you very much. Martin Slatford, who's unable to attend today, one of the parish reps, he's sent a note round. He says he's not convinced that the proposed standard should apply equally to parish and unitary councillors. He says the two roles are becoming further apart in their impact, and he would like clarity from central government as to whether that would be appropriate or not as well. Any other comments? Jo?
Sorry, we're close on that. I think Tony's right in some senses, because it's not just a matter of what people can say, it's what people do. And pre-standards, I was on Tadley Town Council, you know, we had some issues with people who actually joined the council so that they could stop a development in Tadley, an extension to a burial ground, into their land. And every time it was debated, they would not declare a pecuniary interest, which they obviously had. And there was absolutely nothing that you could do at all, except to have it recorded in the minutes that you had objected that they were speaking and they should be declaring an interest. But there was absolutely nothing that you could do apart from report them to the police. So this was the sort of situation that the Standards Committee hopefully could deal with, because if somebody were acting like that now, you could report them. So it isn't just a matter of having an open and fair debate, because I think that's right, and I think we know that, you know, it's a robust debate sometimes, and obviously it's politics and people say things. We're not the House of Commons, but obviously sometimes it can feel like it in the chamber, especially before an election period. So it does get interesting, but it isn't just that. It's also respect for other people, not bullying other people, and making sure that if you have to declare an interest, you have declared that interest so that it's fair and transparent for everybody. And I've always said that we've got very little sanction. Fortunately, we haven't had to apply any sanctions recently. We did have a case where we might have wanted to do that. But sometimes, you know, what can you do? You cannot make a councillor stand down unless they wish to. You have to wait until they're up for election, and hopefully the people will realise that they're perhaps not as good as they should be and don't elect them again. And so you're sometimes stuck with a maverick councillor who is with you for a long period of time, unless you have some way of making them stand down. At least in Parliament, although I don't agree with their standards, they do actually have an ability to make people, suspend people from actually coming into Parliament. So I do think it's more than that, Tony. I think it's not just to stop free speech, it's just to try and make sure everybody keeps to the same rules.
I don't disagree with what you're saying, actually, on those things, but what I felt was happening a number of years ago was that it was used as a political thing, and people were being reported because they didn't like what someone said, you know, to the other person in the chamber. And I know of two councillors, it went on for blooming nearly 6 months, a year, before anything was sorted out. Now, we like to think we're brave, but we're not. But you get that hanging over your head and you feel you've done nothing wrong. And that to me, perhaps there should be a time span. I don't know. But I think everybody's had a good say, and I think there's good points, don't get me wrong. I don't think we should be freelance and do what we want to do. It don't matter. But I think sometimes there is a lot out there.
Linda?
I know this is slightly different, but I know some time ago we actually talked about having time limits to try and bring in on investigations and complaints, etc., because of what you're saying. So I think that's possibly an avenue we might look at when this all gets itself sorted out, is having a time limit to make sure it's all done in a timely manner.
I think there is a time limit for, yes, by all means.
Sorry, I was just going to say, in the current process, there are time limits for acknowledging and then trying to deal with the initial assessment, and then if it goes on, then a longer timescale for dealing with any investigation. Because you're right, Councillor Jones, that it's awful for people having that hang over them, then not dealing with it quickly enough. So that's what we're attempting to do now. That's why we revised the arrangements about 2 years ago, to try and get it a bit quicker process.
Sylvia?
Just a couple of things for me. Firstly, the ones that have come to me have been very quickly brought to me, so that there's not, in my mind, there's not a lot hanging around. We should always support democracy and why people are voted in and such like, but things have changed, and we do have social media now, and we have to be very careful in society now about what we say and how we say it. And we are very good in Basingstoke, I do understand that, but I also get the point that maybe others elsewhere aren't, and we do need to move along with what's happening. Yeah.
Mike?
I think Councillor Slatford's comments, I remember reading through the email when it got sent round, and it is interesting because obviously now that we're likely to become a unitary and we're then potentially not just going to be Basingstoke anymore, we're quite good in Basingstoke. I have no idea what our future colleagues are like at the moment, so it's going to be interesting seeing that. And the other comment was the parish councillors are still going to outnumber us significantly. So it would be good if we can get that clarity as to the sort of level of, I know you're already committed to it, but I thought that was, quite useful. But yeah, thank you.
Thank you very much. Well, if I were to summarise then, I think there's concern about the balance between transparency and being accountable, and councillors being stigmatised and persecuted, as it were, for doing their job and free speech. But there is also a thought about the need to be future-proof, as it were, and to be looking ahead, especially given the new shape of local democracy as proposed by the government. I thank everyone for their thoughts on that. So, if there are no further comments, does the committee agree to note the contents of the report? Thank you very much. So we'll move on to item 6, which is recruitment of independent person and independent standards assessor. Fiona.
Thank you. So it's one of these recurring reports, really. So one independent person and one independent standards assessors, their 4-year term is coming to the end at the end of October. So I'm just seeking committee's approval to recruit, possibly only for a couple of years maybe, but it's very sensible for us to have a number of independent persons and independent standards assessors, so there's enough people to go around the different roles. So that's all I'm asking for tonight, is to start the recruitment process. There's a well-established recruitment process we've had in place for a number of years. It seems to work well. And if anybody wishes to join that process, just to let me know, that'd be lovely. Thank you.
Any comments, Jo?
I did the last round of recruitment. I'm quite happy because I'm around in the daytime, so it's probably easier for most people. I'm quite happy to join the panel when obviously dates are available. But I think you've said it's not going to be now, probably till the autumn time, so Obviously for somebody to be ready for the autumn time, so during the summer months, so need to bear that in mind. I think you have to have 2 borough councillors and 1 parish councillor, don't you, or town councillor?
I'll be happy to continue again.
Well, thank you very much. I think we seem to have a panel to choose from. This is brilliant. You're furiously writing down all the volunteers' names, aren't you? Brilliant. Okay, so any other comments or questions? In which case, we've got a 3-part decision here. Does the committee approve the recruitment of 1 independent person and 1 independent standards assessor? Does the committee, that the interview panel should consist of 2 borough councillors and 1 parish/town councillor, and the monitoring officer or deputy monitoring officer to be present as an advisor to the panel? And does the committee agree that the interview panel recommend to council the appointment of 1 independent person and 1 independent standards assessor? Marvellous. Thank you very much. On now to item 7, which is the draft annual report. Over to you, Fiona.
Thank you. Again, it's a standard item, so there's a draft report which will, when finalised, be presented to council in July. So it's just seeking comments, any additions, any amendments to the draft report, and then I can tidy it up and report it to council. Thank you.
Does anyone have any comments or questions about the annual report? Looked very tidy to start off with, Fiona, I must admit. I'll assume no, in which case, does the committee agree to, and there are 2 parts, approve, subject to any amendments, the annual report for publication? And does the committee agree to recommend presentation of the annual report to council for consideration? Mm-hmm. Lovely, thank you very much. So item 8 is the complaints report. Fiona.
So committee will notice that actually this year there's seen a fair increase in the number of complaints. So from roughly a 5 a year, we're now up to at current point 19 we've received this year. Some of them involve the same parish council, so it's not quite, there's issues in a certain parish council which have led to a number of complaints. But it's quite a big increase for us. I mean, in terms of other councils, it's probably fairly low still, but for us it is quite high. We've only had 1 investigation which found no breach, and there's some learning on there for us in terms of what happened was that the complainant actually never then responded or cooperated with the investigation. So we're going to build in some checks and balances there to make sure that the complainants are, going to stay with the process, and also improve the communication between the investigator and the monitoring officer to look at these things earlier than we did in this one. So that was the learning from that one. I should also say that as written, there were 3 outstanding complaints. We have, since I wrote the report and today, we've concluded one of the other complaints by way of informal resolution. So there are now only 2 outstanding complaints, which is the last one on the list, and I think it is the 056945 one is still ongoing. So there's just 2 outstanding at the moment.
So it's the 9 ones that you finalised today?
Yes.
So any questions or comments on the report and its increasing number of complaints? Joe?
Can I ask? And you don't. I know you can't name the parish council, but is this a parish council that had the training, or were they ones that didn't have the training that we gave?
I can't recall offhand. I'd have to check who attended. I don't think they did, but I'd have to double check that.
It's just that I think if we've done the training, perhaps the whole idea of doing the training was for people to understand what the rules were and hopefully adhere to them. I'm quite disappointed that the person who was complained against didn't actually respond to it. And again, it's what sanction you've got against them if they don't do anything. Presumably, you can just carry on without them and sanction them because they didn't conform.
It was the complainant who didn't cooperate with the investigation. The actual councillor cooperated fully.
Tony?
Yeah, well, you might have 10 parish councils, but we've got 9 borough councils, and that's a high. Have they all been dealt with, the 9 borough councils? And have they been found guilty or whatever the word is? And if they are not, you know, this is what worries me. In as much as yes, people can complain, but it's not good that you're getting more than what they should do. What we've had over the past, you might find that 9 have breached certain rules, but.
No, there haven't been any findings of the borough councillors. No councillors have been found to be in breach of the code of conduct at all. I think the final complaint is regarding a borough councillor, which only came in last week or so. So that's the only one that's outstanding against a borough councillor. We have to deal with the complaints as they come in and deal with them appropriately.
Just makes the figures look bad this year for the borough, and that's what I'm interested in, not the world, but the borough. And it does seem to me that, you know, if we're finding a lot of breaches, and what there might be on certain things, that we can actually learn from that. But if it's just not happening,
sorry, not wishing to be controversial, but we had very low take-up of training by borough councillors. So if there could be a recommendation from this committee to the borough councillors that would for next year, which would be very welcome, really. The parish councillors actually, we had very good attendance last year. I think we trained over 90 last year, and we did about 25 this year as well. So I would encourage all borough councillors to come to this current year's training.
Joe, what would you like to say?
I think we can echo that because obviously we've been saying we haven't had many over the years, and I think last year we had any at all, and now it's gone exponentially. But maybe they weren't serious complaints, but obviously somebody is making complaints about people, and if it is borough councillors of the 9. I mean, if they haven't attended the training, they've got no excuse, have they? They really should have come and learn what they should be doing. And whether they're old, long-standing councillors who think they know, or they're new people who don't attend and still don't know, I think it might be a message that we send that say it would be useful to have the training so we can perhaps reduce the number of borough council complaints.
I don't disagree with the training, actually. But the problem we have, especially at the beginning of May, especially when you've had an election, there's so much training going on. It's trying to fit it in with your own things. But it could be the same as licensing, where it's compulsory. And I think perhaps we should be looking down that line, even if it's one evening.
Sylvia?
I think it's important to remember, and this was part of our conversation with the workshop, that I'm not saying we want to encourage people to come forward, but I would like people to feel suitable enough that they can come forward if they feel they have a complaint, a member of the public or whatever. And that is, there's always going to be two sides to this. It's just like being in employment. We want people to be comfortable if they feel that something has happened, and therefore the figures may go up, but somewhere there's a balance there, and I'm not quite sure where that is. But if parish councillors, borough councillors have the training to understand what the boundaries are, then that can only help, in my opinion.
Yes, Tony.
I think you're right, but what we should be is, well, perhaps it's looking at you, Fiona, now, the way we actually produce the figures and actually have a column saying that we've had, I don't know, 5 we found that they breached, or 4, you know, so, and the rest were not. So people do understand that it's looked at before it even goes forward to anything else.
I seem to remember a long time ago we did discuss about making training compulsory. I can't remember what happened, but I know we have talked about it before.
I think we tried.
Do we have e-learning modules for any staff members at the council, and could we do a code of conduct one? Because then you can make it mandatory, but then people can complete it in their own time, and then you can have a record of who's engaged with it.
There is a LGA e-learning module.
Yeah, it's not fine.
Well, it was referred to. I did refer to it as something as an alternative. We haven't done our own yet, but it's not a bad module actually. I did it myself. It's fun, it's good. So it is an alternative, but we can.
But do we have control over that? Because I work in a corporate environment, and they set a target date when it has to be completed by, and then if it's not completed, someone senior gets a report and you get shouted at. So, you know, you're very intimidating when you do shout at us, Fiona. So, you know, if you wanted that report generated, you could enforce it.
I have very little sway other than to report it to group leaders and the like, and hope that they would encourage their group members to do the training.
Joe, one more.
Would you have to put it in the constitutional review to say this is a mandatory requirement?
In my draft constitutional review at the moment, I've explicitly made it mandatory for the planning and the licensing training to be there. I haven't standards at the moment. I'd have to have that discussion with the group leaders and the constitution working group to see if they're willing to enforce.
Thank you very much. A lot of views there. I think mostly around the need for training and the possibility of making it compulsory, which is something to think about, and the balance between encouraging complaints, i.e. allowing people to feel able to make a complaint, and similarly for councillors not to feel that they're being got at too much. But thank you very much. So that's item number 8. Does the committee agree to note the progress made on complaints received and the learning derived from the consideration of complaints? Thank you very much indeed. So on to number 9 on the agenda, which is the work programme for this committee for 2025-26. Fiona.
So currently for the September meeting, there'll be an update on recruitment of the IP and ISA, and we will also be looking to extend your own term, Chair, and the 2 of the independent persons' terms at the October Council meeting, so we can extend those for another 2 years. So those are the only 2 items. Obviously, if there's any updates, I've added to the regular items at the meeting about if there's any updates on the government's consultation. But other than that, I haven't got any other items, so if anybody's got any suggestions.
Absolutely, Mike.
I think the date's wrong, 17th, not 16th. But also, with the independent standards assessors, having never done it, I'm not quite sure how much of a time commitment it is. it would be great to see some sort of recruitment effort amongst a younger generation, perhaps just get them involved in understanding, not to comment at all on anyone's generation who might already be involved, but yeah, I've recently turned 30, so I'm of an older generation now. And yeah, I think having some people,
Your beard hasn't gone grey. So
having some people perhaps in their 20s and 30s as a target demographic to try and recruit might be a positive thing to aim for. But yeah.
No, I think, sorry, I was going to say a wide recruitment process would be quite useful, wouldn't it? Sorry, this is me expressing an opinion as a chair, but there we go.
It's just having some ideas where I could advertise, I suppose, because we generally just do it
Social media.
social media. Yeah. Okay, yeah, I'll have a think about that. Most of no, so most of the applicants are not of a younger generation. I would say it's people who've got time on their hands to do it. But I absolutely take on board what you're saying. Absolutely.
Any other comments on the work programme or additions to the work programme? In which case, I don't actually have a thing to. Do I note this? Do we agree on it? We agree on it. Thank you very much. Oh yes, we're asked to note on it. Thank you. And then I think we have no confidential items, so there's no need to exclude press or public. In which case, if everyone's happy, we'll conclude the meeting. Thank you all very, very much.
Thank you.